The U.S. war machine is deploying over to the Middle East. And not only that, we are seeing a lot of logistical things happening in the background that seem to be preparing us for World War III, or at least a large-scale deployment to the Middle East. We got a lot of things that we need to be looking at here. Now, a lot of this is also military planners preparing for things that may happen in the future, but it seems like enough equipment is starting to head over the ocean that there seems to be something in the works. We're going to be talking about some of the data points we're looking at right now that kind of indicate that things are moving, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, so you're going to hang on till the very end. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant, and this is what I do. When I'm not doing accounting and not doing YouTubing, I do disaster relief, and when I work disaster relief, a lot of times I do logistical work. This is what I did overseas in the Afghanistan region, where I was working for several years. I did logistics for disaster relief projects, disaster mitigation projects, that type of stuff. And a lot of it was sitting around planning things out, doing a lot of paperwork, and making sure things are where they need to go. And when you look at an army, when you look at a military, if you want to know where it's going to move, look at where the supply trucks are going. Look where the supply ships are going. Look where everything's being moved around, where they're building camps. Because, friends, before you can do anything, you need to have your logistical supply train all ready to go. And the scary thing is what we're seeing right now is the U.S. military is very clearly building their supply network towards the Middle East. So they seem to be thinking that something big is about to go down. Now, obviously, we can look at the big pieces of hardware. We look at the aircraft carriers. We look at the battle groups, and we go, okay, that's where that is. And obviously, there's going to be supply ships that follow those ships around to keep them resupplied, keep fuel going to the ships, making sure they have weapons, munitions, all that kind of stuff. It takes a lot of jet fuel to keep a carrier moving, right? So all that's happening, but that's where everyone else is looking. So we do have those things over there already. We also are seeing bombers being redeployed to the Middle East. We have 2 Lancers that got redeployed to Turkey. Now, Lancer bombers are kind of a big deal. They're not B-52s, they're newer, but they can carry quite a bit of payload. When we redeploy those bombers, it's because we want to save a lot of time flying those things back and forth between the United States and wherever they're going. So when we start deploying them to Diego Garcia, which it's hard to see what's down there, but we can see them being deployed to places like Turkey, because when they start flying overhead, everyone kind of notices them. Diego Garcia down there, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's floating in a little raft offshore there, taking pictures of planes, okay? So we don't know what's down there. So we could have a bunch of bombers, long-distance bombers that are down there. A lot of our big long-distance bombers, it's not unusual for them to fly from the United States, get refueled along the way, and fly all the way around the world to drop payload somewhere else. We were doing that all the time in Afghanistan, but of course, them flying out of Diego Garcia is a lot closer. But a lot of these bombers, they have some pretty significant requirements for the runways. You need to have a pretty long runway, and it needs to be pretty heavily reinforced, especially when they're loaded up with bombs and fuel and all that kind of stuff like that. They have a tendency to break runways, or at least put a lot of wear and tear on them. So there's only certain runways that they could use for these things. The one in Incirlik in Turkey, that is a pretty big runway. We designed it and built it in order to accommodate a lot of big bombers. But there's only so many spots there. So 2 is probably as many as they can probably house there. I wouldn't be surprised if they're building more bunkers to put more bombers in. But they also have a logistical tail there. They can only carry so much. But anyway, these bombers are a big deal that they moved over there. Now, also, there's a lot of talk out there of increased recruitment. 400 new recruiters, and potentially the recruiters for the U.S. Army are going to go continuing upward. And so a lot of people are talking about that as possible, forced recruitment, right? The draft. And that's possible. I don't know. But that seems a little bit longer over the horizon kind of thinking. And that might not be a bad thing to do, is to bring back the draft. We may need to do that. So there's that. And then there's a lot of talk out there about CENTCOM, Central Command, which covers the Middle East, canceled the Marine Corps ball because something might go down. Here we are, and nothing's gone down over the Marine Corps ball. So that was probably more to do with just the fact that stuff just unstable in the Middle East. A lot of our bases being attacked by drones and that kind of thing, but not a major deployment or anything like that, because most of the troops in the region were already deployed. In addition to that, what else are we seeing? We're seeing U.S. Navy logistical ships and U.S. merchant marine ships. They're busy. They're busier than they usually are, and they're carrying equipment to the Middle East. We're seeing some of the merchant marine ships on the West Coast actually repositioning over to the East Coast. And in addition to that, we're seeing a lot of equipment moving around outside the United States. A number of you guys have mentioned seeing a lot of equipment on railroads, and they are heading to the ports. We are sending more vehicles, more armor, all that kind of stuff like that. Now, it is a little hard to say, is that heading over to Eastern Europe, or is it heading over to the Eastern Mediterranean? It's hard to say. Or potentially even to more of the Persian Gulf type area to reinforce Saudi Arabia and some of the other Arab countries down there. It's hard to say because those ships, they don't tell us where they're going. But we do see a bunch of military hardware getting loaded up onto ships. And where's it going? That's a good question. Now, we've had a steady flow heading to Eastern Europe, but here's the thing. We've run out of money. So people pushing back on all this money flowing to Eastern Europe has finally got to the point where they can't keep sending them free stuff anymore. And because of that, we see all this equipment. Where is it headed? That's something we should be asking already. So there's that. But not only that, but we're also seeing Army logistics are moving a lot of material too. The equipment, but also personnel. We're seeing logistics units getting called up. And we're seeing logistics units getting deployed. You don't move logistical units around unless you're expecting to move a whole lot of troops around. And you should be looking for that. The first guys in, you have the Marines, rapid deployment forces. You have the airborne units that are ready for rapid deployment. And there's some units like Rangers and stuff like that are supposed to be able to deploy very quickly. But if you're going to send more than that, or you're going to actually have them in some place for a while, you need logistics going there. You need water supply. You need bases built. You need lots of people over in those places. So we're seeing logistics starting to move around a lot more. So what's happening? Something seems to be happening, or they seem to think that something is about to happen. So as we see the military war machine kind of ramping up, we see U.S. military ships moving around and a lot of the hardware moving around. That begs the question, is the U.S. Department of Defense preparing to defend into another country again? Quite possibly. Now, where would this potentially be happening? One, we could be reinforcing our bases in Syria. That's possible. Our defending invasion into Syria. We have some bases in Iraq that have been coming under attack. We have been hearing a lot about missile defense systems being sent in, like close air support kind of weapons, like a CRAM and stuff like that for defending bases. It doesn't seem to be like what we're seeing on these ships. What we seem to be seeing on these ships are armored vehicles. Not a whole lot of tanks, but armored vehicles and Humvees and stuff like that. Well, the newer stuff. All that. So where's it all headed? I don't know. But we'll just pass that along to you guys to be thinking about what you're thinking. And let us know what you guys are seeing and what you guys are thinking what all this might mean. But it does look like a military buildup, or at least the readiness to do so. We can stage things in Turkey. We can stage things in Europe if we're trying to go in the Middle East. But our military bases that are somewhere near an ocean, we'd have to be looking at some of the Gulf states and whether they're really willing to take more U.S. troops right now. They'd have to be feeling pretty threatened. Now, these Gulf states want us to go after Iran. They might be willing for that to happen. Either that, or we may be just gifting a whole bunch of stuff to Israel. Though, if they're U.S. vehicles that are pretty noticeably U.S. vehicles, and we give them to the Israelis, they're still going to look like U.S. vehicles. And that may not be a look that we may be going for right now. So, a lot of things to be thinking about. Are we sending more stuff to Europe? That's possible too. I've heard people talking about there being desert paint jobs on these vehicles. So, I mean, they can always be painted once they get to Europe, but you'd think they'd do that here. But then maybe they're trying to fake us all out. I don't know. Maybe it's 3D chess. Could be. Or it could just be heading to the Middle East like we think it is. Anyway. All right, friends, let us know what you guys are thinking down in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. If you haven't already subscribed, how about poking that button right there? Subscribe. There's another subscribe button down there, too. Thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.